up. Get ready. It's going to be a very, very intense journey.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to episode 59 of Frame Skip, a pretty good video game podcast. I am your host this evening. Joining me tonight is one of my favorite people to talk to about games. That is Austin Four-Eyed. I panicked. I couldn't think of a better nickname. That sounded so mean and derogatory. And oh god, it's yeah,
so I'm your favorite person, but you immediately insult me.
I'm just negging you to make you love me more. I just want you to fight for my affection and my praise. I panicked. I'm so sorry. Also, I love those frames. They are legitimately super cool. And when I go to the eye doctor very soon, because I finally have vision, thank you to my new job.
Yeah.
I want to get something that looks like those because those are sexy as hell, Austin.
Well, thank you. I love them.
This is a superpower.
They're polo frames, actually.
Oh.
Which I typically don't really get like super expensive frames, but because my insurance is pretty good right now because I'm still on my parents for another like 6 months.
Woo-woo!
I got some pretty nice frames this time, and yeah, I love them. But that doesn't mean anything to the audio listeners who cannot see any of this. So... audio listeners, just know that I have some awesome glasses.
Audio listeners, do me a favor. Just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine the sexiest possible shape of metal you can resting on the bridge of Austin's nose.
That's true.
And if you do that, you'll be within 10% of the glasses that are actually resting on Austin's nose.
Now, I will tell you, just while we're talking about this, I did get the blue light filter on these glasses.
Oh, yeah?
And I kind of regret it.
How come?
Because I feel like it doesn't really do anything so far. And two, it makes everything yellow. So like everything has a slight yellow tinge.
That's strange. My partner has the blue tint glasses and she's a big fan. She spends all day looking at monitors. I mean, you do too. You work in like audio tech, right? Yeah.
Well, and maybe now it's like partially because I have them. I feel like it's not a big difference, but maybe going back to the old pair, you know, maybe it's a bigger difference than I'm thinking. But anyway,
also, I wonder how many of your screens are dark, because like you do like audio editing stuff, right? And like engineering and
I do a mix of everything. I do some audio stuff and writing and production but pretty dark usually.
Gotcha. I wonder, just because partner's a lawyer, so she spends most of her time like reading documents and typing in documents, and so because of that, like her screens are usually like white, and so I wonder like if that's like a more effective use of
that. Could be because our teleprompter is black and it has white font, so like the background obviously that I'm reading most of the day is like a black screen with white text on it. So that could actually be why. So
you
George,
hear that, listeners? We are not just video game nerds. We're also hypothetical scientists trying to figure out why certain things.
So George, I heard you like nuclear.
Are.
I heard you like nuclear fission. Let's talk about that one a little bit.
I like fission. I don't think it's as effective as nuclear fusion.
Really?
So I think once we get a compact fusion reactor, that's when things get really exciting.
Well, all right then.
Man,
that's a great way to start off the show.
Yeah, so, sorry. Before we get into video games, because we didn't talk about video games last week. That was our E3 episode, so we were catching up on the exciting stuff from E3, and I'm really glad we did that. But I was bummed because we didn't get to talk about what we've been playing, and you and I have both been playing the same game, which doesn't happen very often. So I'm excited to dive into that. But before we talk about games, I just got to say, man, have you seen Bo Burnham's new special on Netflix, Inside? I
haven't, but I've heard like incredible things.
Oh my goodness, man. I've been following that dude's career. I did the math like for 11 years now. Like I saw him live when I was in college because I was like a fan of his. There was like a girl who lived on the floor above me that I had a huge crush on. And then she told me that she was in love with this performer named Bo Burnham. So I hated him for 5 minutes before Googling who he was. And then I ended up having like a bigger crush on Bo Burnham than I did on the girl. And so like just like seeing like the trajectory of, I guess like his message across specials has just been like so fascinating. And like this feels like the logical culmination of like everything that he's been saying about like performance and the audience performer relationship. And it was just transformative. It was a very engaging special that I cannot recommend enough when you have time.
I've actually never really consumed too much of his content. I've seen some things and heard some things, but I've never jumped I've never dove too deep into his stuff, but I do really want to watch it. I've heard so many people talking about it, so it definitely seems like something that is like a must watch from
Yeah,
kind of the societal reaction to it,
yeah,
I
the
suppose.
zeitgeist of the moment for sure.
Yeah.
I think you can totally watch it on its own. I think you'll get a little bit more out of it if you watch like his specials in order.
Okay.
But also like that sucks. It's like me telling someone like, oh yeah, that TV show's really good, but the first two seasons are crap. But once you get to season 3, then it gets really. It's like, oh, I just have to watch 28 hours of television
Yeah.
before it becomes interesting. That's nice. Yeah, I totally have the time to do that. So I don't want it to be like homework or anything like that. But if you have the time, I do recommend. And also, it's interesting to go back because I think this, like I said, is like there's like a continuity between like the statements he's making about art and performance and creativity, and they all sort of like reach an apex in this. But like it's interesting to sort of like trace the tree rings back to how he first started.
Right.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about Bo Burnham. We're not here to talk about glasses. We are here to talk about nuclear fission. So Austin, I'm just kidding. We are playing
Let's
games.
dive into it.
We are playing games. We are playing the same game. Let's just talk about it. We've been playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
We have.
Take it away, because you've beaten the game.
Yeah. So I got it launch day, obviously. I was really looking forward to it. I think a couple weeks back, we had both done that episode where we talked about our most anticipated games for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And we had both mentioned Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And so I was really looking forward to it. My one concern moving into that game, though, and if you've listened to the podcast a couple weeks ago, you probably remember this, where I was playing Control and just adoring that game. And just by chance, I beat the very last DLC like the morning that Ratchet and Clank came out. So it was like just the perfect alignment of everything. But I got it, and I've been dying to talk about this game because obviously, like you said, we didn't last week. Just beat it this morning, so it took me about a week and a half, and just absolutely adored that game.
Yeah.
I mean, my history with Ratchet and Clank, Ratchet and Crank. All
Ratchet
right.
and Crank it, baby. Yeah.
My history with Ratchet and Clank is actually I really don't have that much. I didn't play it too much when I was younger. I think I played a little bit of the first game. And I did really get into Future Tools of Destruction and then Quest for Booty, but I actually kind of dropped off on the PS3 gen right where I should not have, because A Crack in Time was the next one, and everyone says that game is like the best in the series. So still a game I haven't played. But it's, my point in saying this is I don't have actually like a really storied history with the series. But I loved the 2016 one. I thought it was a fantastic game. And so just with that in mind, I really wanted to dive into Rift Apart, and I did, and I loved it. It's a phenomenal game. And up until this point, I feel like there hasn't really been a PS5 system seller. But I would honestly say that this, to me at least, is a system seller. I think had I not owned a PS5 and this was like the first game I had purchased a system for, the PS5 for, I would have been so delighted.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's a shorter game. It's only 10, 15 hours if you're trying to platinum it. But I still think that the sheer joy that I've gotten out of this game is just unlike, honestly, anything I've played in recent years. I mean, there's something about it that's just so unique. Some of the writing, like you sit there and you listen to some of the context and dialogue that's happening, and for the first time in like years, I just like audibly laughed at parts of this game.
Yeah.
And it just made me like really happy that I'm like sitting there playing this game and like, feeling like a kid all over again, and just laughing and enjoying my time with it and enjoying the characters and the worlds and just everything about it. My mini review would be, I think it's a near perfect video game. I think there are some flaws here and there, but I think as far as games in recent years, it's kind of funny because like coming off Control 2 weeks ago, I said it was one of my new favorite video games of all time. And honestly, this one's probably up there as well. Like I really love Rift Apart. I really love Rift Apart.
It's really funny too, right? Because like Control is like a third person action shooter where like your powers like help you manipulate the environment. And Ratchet and Clank is like almost the same game, right? But it's just like it does it with such like a joyous, cartoonish lens, And so you have all these different weapons that let you interact with the environment, and more not environment's kind of a stretch, but I guess like lets you sort of handle enemies in different ways. And so it really is funny just like comparing those two or going from one of those games immediately into the other, because it's just like this is one interpretation of a third person shooter, and it's just like, oh cool, we just went the complete other way. Like we're like, okay, what if this, the controls, like what if this was like a really deep introspective almost like nihilist nightmare, and then Ratchet and Clank was like, what if this was like a water slide that you could just like shoot aliens and robots from. And it's like, oh, that's actually like an amusement park. It's just like, oh, that's actually way more my speed right now. Like, I don't know if I'm gravitating towards it because of the past year. And actually, I've had like a really fortunate life, but like the year before the pandemic was actually just like super stressful for me, just because I was like having a lot of anxiety and like panic attacks. And there was like a 14-month period where I was like scared to leave my apartment basically, unless I was going to like work or the comic book store or like not even bars, but just like this one bar in particular. And I'd only go on Thursdays. Like it was, and so like, I don't know, like if that's what my brain chemistry is, and like why I'm like, oh, this is just like so good to me right now. But it really is. And I'm taking my time with it. I've been super busy with work, but like I've been trying to do like a planet every other day.
Right.
And it's been tough because the NBA playoffs are happening. We're in the conference finals. You must be really happy with the Atlanta Hawks in there.
Well, I don't follow basketball at all, but I do know that people are excited that the Hawks apparently don't suck this year.
Oh my God, Hawks are incredible. Hawks are great. They could legitimately win the whole thing. They have to get through Giannis, which is going to be tough in Milwaukee, but they got a shot. So when I'm not watching basketball for teams I traditionally have never cared about, but because the games are so compelling, I am playing Ratchet and Clank, and I'm sort of like making concessions with myself, like, oh, I got work to do. It's like, this is actually way more important to me mentally right now to be playing this game. And yeah, it brought up similar vibes to the Astrobot or Astro's Playroom.
Absolutely.
Where it was just like, what if we celebrated what made things cool about video games instead of trying to sort of like pigeonhole a specific feeling? Like they just come up with so many different ways to let you have fun, and it's the dumbest things. Like I just did this one level where this isn't really spoilers, one level where like parts of rooms were flooded and there were like rafts that you could jump up on, and like they would give you like a lift and help you get to like a higher level, and just like the feeling of jumping on the rafts just like felt good. Like they put so much thought and attention to like the haptic feedback your controller would get on these bouncy little balloon things basically. And like they're even in the first level, you're jumping on balloons trying to get from like one part of a parade to another part of the parade. I think the characters are great. Like you, I never really spent much time with this franchise. I was kind of a bad video game player in the early 2000s just because I was 13 and shooters had just sort of become popular. And so I was like playing most of the shooters because I thought those were like cool, mature stories. And then I was pretty much just doing like licensed games because those were the fastest ones to become like $20. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I work at a crappy restaurant and I don't get paid very much money. So if I can buy a video game for 3 hours of work, that's great, because that means I can buy 2 video games from a day's work. Like $7 an hour. Woo. And so like that sort of like shaped my video game library growing up. And like I never played Jack and Daxter. I never played Ratchet and Clank. But because of this, I'm like, oh man, maybe I should go back and explore. And like I played the Spyro trilogy for the first time ever back in like December and November, and like had a blast with that. I'm like, oh, like maybe it's not a kid's game. Like I understand like the naming convention, but like I think it's really important for kids to have games that they can play, that are like safe for kids. But like at the same time, like if this is designed for kids, it's like tickling all the parts of my brain that like give me like childlike wonder, and so just like maybe there's something there. Like maybe you are happier with games when they're made for kids because it just puts you in the mindset of a kid.
Well, and it's like too, I mean, it's not even just games. It's like you look at Pixar movies or whatever it may be. It's clearly aimed at a wide audience, I guess, is the thing. But because of that, it has that stigma of like, oh, this is for kids, which it is. But you could say Ratchet and Clank is for kids as well. But I think the better descriptor would be it's meant for all ages. And certainly Ratchet and Clank. I mean, there's stuff in it that's like ridiculous. Like I don't even think I actually noticed this, but apparently all the games have some sort of innuendo in their name.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think I actually ever noticed that until like a few days ago. And so this one apparently is supposed to be ripped a fart.
Yeah.
And I was like just in shock. Like I didn't know that was what rift apart was supposed to kind of align to. But there's certainly my point is it's certainly like, sure, kids can enjoy it and I'm sure kids would love it, but certainly I think there are certainly more like adult aspects, and the series has certainly aged, I think, as well. Like it's definitely aged with us. There's just parts of it, like the story in this game to me was so thrilling. Like there was actually a lot about it that is super, super well written, and I really cared about the characters. And like you said, it really tickled a part of my emotions, my brain that like I feel like nothing else really does, aside from maybe the Nintendo game here or there,
Sure.
depending on what it is. But even this, it's like it's the perfect mix of kind of that fun for all ages atmosphere mixed in with that story that is maybe a little bit more mature, that is maybe something that's more like emotionally driven. And I love it for that. I love it for that.
Yeah, I'm having a blast. Like I wonder if I'm like artificially extending my playtime with it too. You know, like just like putting it off. I'm like, okay, just a little bit. Like you don't like I don't want to say like the PlayStation 5 is in like a drought. I don't believe it is. Plus there's so much from PlayStation 4 that I didn't play. Like it's not a bad thing that there isn't like a new banger PlayStation 5 game coming out every week, you know. But I wonder, like, if I'm just like, trying to preserve it, just like a little bit of like water in the desert, just being like, all right, you can have some today, but not all of it. Don't go crazy, young buck.
Yeah,
no, I'm enjoying it. Like the particle effects are gorgeous. The seamless transition between like actual dimensions is beautiful. Like it's such a cool way that they fractured this reality. It's great, and I love the new character, like the Rivet. Like I think she's awesome.
There's another, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's another new character you get a little bit later on. Have you gotten to that character yet?
I believe so. Yeah.
That character is awesome too, and
fantastic. Yeah.
I really like. To me, at least, I like all the new characters they introduce in this game because it feels. Maybe this is a weird comparison, but it feels kind of like the start of a new Ratchet and Clank series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it was kind of similar with the Future series on PS3. It was intended to be kind of like, okay, we've done the original 3 or 4 or whatever it was on PS2. Here's the next saga. And this definitely feels that way to me. And I love that because it makes it the perfect starting place for people that haven't played Ratchet and Clank before, or people like us that never really dove too deep into the series. Because all the new characters, everyone's on the same ground as far as the audience. So, but yeah, I mean, just to comment on the graphics, it's got to be one of the best looking games, if not the best looking game I've ever played. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I've been playing on the performance RT mode. Is what I've been doing. I don't know which one you've been doing, but the ray tracing is fantastic.
I think I went for performance too, because like I'm still playing on like a 1080 TV. Like I'm still at my parents' house. So they don't have like the 4K wizard TV that I'm excited to unpack from storage and plug my PlayStation 5 into finally.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great, and I think it's really interesting that like I feel like there's two types of like story conceits we've really sort of been exploring a lot lately, and one of them is like time loops, and that one I understand just because of like the nature of the last year, where every day just felt like a microcosm of a macrocosm, like it just felt like you were just exploring the same cycle because you were stuck in the same space. But another territory that I feel like we've been exploring lately, like is like this idea of like a multiverse, like a multiversity of experiences, and it's just like, hey, like if you feel alone, there's another place where there's someone just like you who feels just like you but isn't you, like that because of that you're not alone. And like I think like into the Spider-Verse was probably like the most prominent one of that of the
Right.
past couple years, right? But Ratchet and Clank, I think, like picks up that baton really well. And yeah, I just I don't have enough good things to say about it. Like the game is just it's exactly how I want to spend the hour or so every other day that I have time to play a PlayStation game.
Yeah, and it's very digestible. I mean, maybe it's just because of like my lifestyle and my kind of my social life or lack thereof. But I really have grown fond of like the 10 to 15 hour game.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah.
It's so much better like than the 50-hour title. I mean, I almost avoid those completely anymore just because I don't have time. And um the length of this game is perfect. The story is like perfect. And like you said with the planets, what I was doing was about the same thing. I think I was doing about half a planet every day, or at times the only reason I was able to get through it so quick is I would do half a planet in the morning before work and then the other half when I got home. So it's very digestible, and I really liked that as well. But yeah, I mean, I can't offer enough praise for this game. It's so good. And next, because I haven't played it yet, I'm going to play Miles Morales, which is like the perfect kind of follow up to that because they're both
that's
developed
also
by Insomniac.
That's like a 10-hour game. So
Yeah, I know. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm really excited for you to play that. I know Seth wasn't a fan of it. I love Seth. He's just super picky when it comes to Spider-Man stories. And I understand why, because Spider-Man's super important. Spider-Man's been there for him like his entire life. I get that. He's very protective of Spidey. I think it's really important to remember that Miles Morales is not Peter Parker. And so they have different experiences. And so I think as long as you go into this understanding like this is going to be a different Spider-Man, you're going to have a good time. And like I love that. I think that was like the exact iconic Miles Morales story that like the comics have kind of produced, but I guess like it's just weird because like with Peter Parker, you just like point to so many like, oh, what about this story, like all these like defining moments, and Miles Morales is just like so new that like he doesn't have as many of those. Yeah, but like this game, I really think is like one of them. You know, it's like this and like Spider-Verse, and then there's like a couple stories that come to mind, but besides that, yeah, again, I don't have enough nice things to say about that game either.
I'm really looking forward to digging into it finally, because I bought it the day I bought my PS5, and for some reason, I don't know why I didn't dig into it immediately. I think I was playing. Oh, it was because I was playing Ghost of Tsushima still when I bought my PS5,
Nice.
and I played that game for like another couple months after I bought my PS5. So I just never picked it up, never dove into it. But I mean, I have to say, I know I'm going to love it just because I loved Spider-Man PS4, and I'm not that particular when it comes to Miles Morales. I really like his character, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say before we move away from this that, obviously Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank, both developed by Insomniac. I got to say, I mean, they might be my new favorite developer.
Really?
I mean, they're after Spider-Man PS4, which I just absolutely adored. I mean, the story in that game I couldn't get enough of. And then, Rift Apart, the same thing. And I'm assuming I'm going to adore Miles Morales too. They've just been putting out some real bangers, and it's like I said with with Ratchet and Clank, it's both of Spider-Man PS4 and Ratchet and Clank. They were the perfect amount of like, okay, here's like a pretty mature story, but with enough lighthearted comedy, kind of fun stuff mixed into it, that it just feels like a real joy to experience. And I'm all about that right now. So
very cool. No, I think that's really cool. That like I know that like Naughty Dog probably gets like all the praise, and like I think they're probably the most talented developer, but they're not the developer I'm like most interested in.
No.
You know, like I really like Uncharted 3. I like the Uncharted series. I think it has its problems. But I've like still like I've never been compelled to like finish the first Last of Us, and because of that, like I've never been compelled to finish the second Last of Us. You know, but like there's just something about Insomniac sort of like exploring all these things, because Insomniac, they also did oh god, what was that Xbox One?
Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah, dude, that game ruled. Like that game was great. And so like they've just shown just like a variety that I find really interesting, and the fact that they're like, we want to say something about the power of the console, about sort of like connections or whatever. maybe Ratchet and Clank is the best way to explore that. It's like, all right, we want to say something about like epic storytelling. Maybe Spider-Man is the best way to do that. And so like their ability to sort of like dance between different genres, I guess, is like really interesting. And I don't mean to dog developers that like always stick to like third person or first person, whatever. Like that's not like a critique on them, but I feel like the fact that they do take so many risks is part of what keeps them sort of like
Right.
keeps their sword sharp, I guess, just because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we get to do this, we get to like get everything we want to say about it out right now, and then they work on something else and they're like, well, you know what, it's been a couple years, I think we got one more thing to say about how we explore this type of space, and they just get a chance to experiment, and I think that's you're way more interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think there's something about their games that I feel like no one else is really replicating right now. I don't know what that is. I think it's like I said, there's just something about them that are, to me at least, there's just such a blast involved with playing them compared to, again, like you said, with Naughty Dog. Nothing wrong with their games, but they're so, to me at least, with Last of Us, for example, like I didn't even want to play Last of Us 2, not because of all the controversy, but because of how like just dark and serious that game is. And like I get it. Like people, have that, those games have a place, and people like that atmosphere, and I don't have a problem with that. Just for me, it's like I think I'm starting to gravitate more towards like the fun kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but the more like Pixar-y type stuff, the more
Sure,
like,
yeah.
fun for all ages. Like this is just a blast to enjoy and play.
No, man, like, hey, let's release a game about like an incredibly serious and dark and heavy topic at a time when people are having very
Yeah.
dark and serious and heavy
Right.
emotions. And it's like,
Right.
well, actually, I
Right.
might watch Muppets Take Manhattan instead, because that seems like a little bit more my speed. Like, I think that's like the
Yeah.
stimulant I need to introduce into my system right now, as
Right.
opposed to this incredibly, like, by all accounts, incredibly gripping, compelling, wonderfully told, it perfectly produced like story. Like, I'm not denying
Absolutely.
their craft. It's not that, but it's just like, look, man, I know me, and right now I can't handle this. Like,
Yeah.
Maybe some other time. Instead, I'm going to play Astro's Playroom again, because the GPU Jungle song makes my heart feel things that I haven't felt in years. So I'm going to just skip right to that section,
Right.
All right. I think we've gushed enough about Insomniac
so.
and about Ratchet and Clank. Fantastic game.
Yep.
Do you think it'll go on sale soon?
Well, I did see today for Prime Day, a lot of PS5 games were on sale, and Returnal was already $50.
Okay.
So that was a couple months back. So I if I don't, Amazon might be the only retailer doing that sale, so I'm not exactly sure. And I know Returnal probably will not have sold as well as Ratchet and Clank will. But I would bet still that probably within a couple months it'll probably be $50-$60 at least.
It's just tough because like this is art, this is people's hard work for years, and so like I can't come out and say that this game isn't worth $70, because like to me it is. But I can also see a world where someone spends $70 and they're just like, huh, that was it,
Right?
And like Returnal even more so. Like that game is like a masterpiece to me, but also it's like, man, if you I don't think there was a demo for it, so like there was no real way to like sort of try it out. It's just like, oh, this thing that I didn't like in the first time, oh, that's the whole game. Like, oh crap, man, like $70 is a lot of money,
No, I can't buy it, because that's exactly me. I'm like, I've heard good things about it, but I've also heard like the whole kind of repetitive nature of it, and I'm like, man, I can't. Like, financially, I just can't put down $70 on that game. But maybe once it's like $20-$30, I'll try it. But no, for sure, with Rift Apart, I get it. $70 for 10-15 hours. I know that's not everyone's like favorite thing, I suppose, but I know there are people out there that play 6 hours of a game every day, and at that rate, maybe $70 isn't worth two nights of a video game. I don't know. But to me, no, I for sure think it's worth $70, but I get it.
Gotcha. All right, final question. Are you going to platinum this game?
Yes, I'm 2 trophies away.
Very cool. All right.
So
From what I can tell, I'm just like playing through the game naturally. I'm not like going back and like farming for trophies as I go. From what I can tell, you can do it in one playthrough if you're careful. Yep. But it seems like it does like a really good job of like helping you as the game goes on.
It's very easy. There's nothing really much to it. There's a few things that are like collectibles, obviously, your standard kind of collectible things you have to find. But for the most part, at least that I know of, nothing is missable. Gotcha. I don't think there's anything you can actually miss.
All right. All right. So we're going to go from talking about a super fun game to, a significantly less fun game. I've been checking out all the PlayStation Plus games every month just because I moved from San Francisco, where a lot of my friends are. I feel very isolated here in Maine, so I'm using video games as a means to stay in touch with people. And that is why I loved Zombie Army 4, platinum that, I think, since the last time we spoke. So wanted to give an update to people. Super fun platinum. Great DLC. Really, really enjoyed that game. This most recent month, Star Wars Squadrons came out on PlayStation Plus, which is super cool. That's not the game I'm talking about. Virtua Fighter Championship Edition, I believe is what it's called, or a Virtua Fighter. That one came too. It's also not the game I'm talking about. I am talking about Operation Tango. I think I talked about We Were Here at the end of the year last year, because that's like a co-op escape room game. And so Operation Tango operates in a very similar space to that. It is essentially an escape room where it's a 2-player co-op game. You have to have voice chat in order to play. One person plays as a hacker, one person plays as an agent, and so you are constantly, one character moves forward 2 steps so that another person can move up 1 step, and then that person moves up 2 steps so the other person can move up 1 step. So it's very just sort of like cooperative, inching along. I think there's so much to like about this game, and when this game works, this game is incredible. And when I say works, I've had issues with like connectivity. Like I've had like headsets just like drop out, but like work on like the PlayStation chat, but just like in the PlayStation party, but just not work in the game. And that's been annoying. And I've had a couple like session ending bugs where I'm just like, all right, this is the last thing we have to do, but like there's no button prompt to do the thing that I know we have to do because I've already beaten that level. And so like those things are frustrating. That's not even what I'm talking about. I think what makes a game like this good is how intuitive you can make certain things. And so it's just like you're presented with 3 sets of information, A, B, and C. And you communicate that to your partner, being like, all right, I have this, this, and this. Does that correspond to anything you're seeing? And then like the other person's like, yeah, I'm in a room. I see a keypad. It's looking for something like a 4-digit number. And you're like, okay, I have a 4-digit number. Try typing this in. And then that opens up a door. And so like that, it's sort of like that sort of give and take relationship that happens between the hacker and the agent. And when it works, like I said, it's fantastic. You just feel like you're the smartest people in the world. Like it feels like in Portal when you finally like crack the puzzle you're supposed to do. There are other times when it's just so beyond obtuse that it just makes itself not fun anymore. And I think a big part of that is there are some missions that probably should have been 2 missions. Like a long level in this is just infuriating. I think the sweet spot is like 7 to 12 minutes per level, but there was one that took like, no joke, 45 minutes to complete, and it was just like, bro, like you gotta let me out of the like you gotta let me off the ride a little sooner than that. Yeah. And so like you gotta break that up. I think that probably should have been 2 or 3 missions. And so like in that regard, it was a little frustrating. But I mean, it's free with PlayStation Plus, so you should check it out. I really like the art style. It has like this sort of like post-millennialism, I guess, is like what I call it. Like it almost looks like those like progressive animated car insurance cartoons. You know what I'm talking about? Like the flat ones that like John Krasinski did the voice for. And it's just got like this optimistic future vibe that I really dig, where like it looks like the future we were promised, like at the beginning of the millennium. And so like because of that, I'm like obsessed with this game. Like I think it looks gorgeous. I love the art direction in it. And a lot of the puzzles are super fun to do. Some of them repeat themselves, and it's usually like the less fun ones that repeat themselves, like a mini game for you to like hack. But like it does clever things where it's like you have to get a ball into a cup basically, and one player controls like the ball going up and down, and the other person controls it going side to side, and then they introduce elements. There's one really cool thing where one player is looking at like a 2D screen and they're able to like place platforms, and the other player is in like a 3D virtual space where they have like a 3D platformer with like things coming at them that the other player can't see, so they have to like perfectly describe. I played It Takes Two earlier this year also.
Right.
I think that game is probably my favorite co-op game that I've played so far this year. We were here. I've only played like the first level, but because of that, my friend and I, who I played it with, we bought like the next two games in the series, so we're probably going to check those out soon. I would probably rank Operation Tango third, but like I still think there's more good than bad here. But the technical stuff, when it faults is frustrating.
That is a little annoying. I do want to try it, and I guess I don't know how it would work because Andie and I would play it like in the same room. So I don't know. Chat wise, I mean, obviously, I guess for the purpose of the game, like we would try to avoid looking at each other's monitors, but I do want to try it because when I heard that it was like a co-op only game coming to PS Plus, I hadn't heard of it first off, and I'm always looking for games like that just because that's, Andie and I really like to dive into games together. So I do want to play for sure though at some point. It Takes Two. But I probably will try out Operation Tango as well.
That game's great for like the same screen experience. Like that's a great like couch co-op game. For Operation Tango, they actually like give a warning at the beginning. They're just like, you really shouldn't see the other person's screen. That kind of like
oh really?
That kind of ruins what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
So if you can set it up so like someone's at a monitor, and they're facing away, I guess.
Yeah,
and
that's probably how we would do it because I'm sitting at my desk now, so somebody would play at the screen I'm at, and then the TV is facing the other direction right over there. So it would be, separate directions. So at least that would be a possibility.
Sure.
But I do like too the whole, kind of like how I think It Takes Two did it as well, where you can if one person buys the game, you can like send a copy to the other person.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. So I really like that stuff.
Yeah, that one's actually. Yeah, I think that I can't remember if it was like two different SKUs basically, where like one person downloaded like the companion app basically. But no, like I think this is like a super fun genre that's like absolutely worth exploring. There's just some parts of this one where I think it falls short, but I don't think it's like a bad game. I just think it's like an occasionally very frustrating game. But like when you do it, like oh God, you feel like a rocket scientist. Like you just feel like the smartest person who's ever existed.
Nice.
All right.
Well, I'll play it at some point.
Yeah, very cool. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it because like I've played it with like a friend, but like I have to imagine playing it like with your like partner is like stressful.
Yeah.
So like that tension sounds really interesting.
Well, we played through the entirety of Super Mario 3D World on Switch together, including the final level, which is like almost impossible.
Wow, and you still dated, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is we're somehow still, we're still together.
Wow, stronger than ever. Thank you, Super Mario 3D World.
So, a lot of tension with that one.
Thanks, Miyamoto. You did it. All right, I think that about wraps up. Anything else you've been playing you want to talk about?
Elijah and I just because I talked about this last week, how much I love the Xbox conference, and especially with Forza Horizon 5 on the way, I went out and somehow managed to buy a Series X. And funny story on that, just briefly, is that GameStop was going to get a stock, I think it was last Wednesday, in store only. They tweeted about it. And I called my store to like make sure they were getting a stock. He wouldn't tell me how many they were getting. But he was like, yeah, we're getting a few, and it's first come, first serve. So I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like going. Whatever. Like, I don't really want one. And then like an hour before GameStop opens, they open at 11. I just am like, yeah, I'll go check and just see. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, there's no way an hour before the store opens that it's not going to be completely, across the block line wise.
Right.
But I get there an hour before and there's one guy there. And he's been there for like 3 hours prior to that. And he's like, yeah, they're getting like 8 Series X's and I'm the only one here. And it's an hour before the store opens. So I was like, well, I guess I have to buy one now. So I bought a Series X and I haven't played it too much yet because I'm kind of holding off on playing it until I get through Miles Morales. And then Mario Golf also comes out this week. So it might be a little bit till I get to it. But right. I knew it was like my one chance, for right now. to pick one up. But Elijah and I did play some of Gears 4 the other night, and
awesome.
it has that FPS boost where you
Mhm.
can play it in 60 frames, and it's awesome. Really cool feature. So,
Very cool.
but that's the only other thing I've been playing.
Oh man, thank you for reminding me about Mario Golf. We got to play that this weekend.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
God, I'm so excited.
I know. I'm really excited for that game.
All right. Honestly, yeah, I really like my PlayStation 5. I don't regret my purchase, but like honestly, like I've been just sort of like mining video games for nostalgia lately. And so it's just one of those things where I'm like, wait, you're telling me that the games from my past will play better on Series X? Like, damn, did I buy the wrong one? Like,
Well, dude, it's
for what I'm
crazy
hoping
too.
for what I'm hoping to accomplish with video games right now, did I
Yeah.
buy the wrong console?
It's crazy.
Kind of feels like I did.
It's crazy because there are so many games, on PS5, a lot of the games that were on PS4 got like upgrades where they got the upgrade version with the frame rate boost. But on the Series X, some of the games just, I don't know how it works, but it's just called like FPS boost. And some of the games just, I guess, unlock their frame rate or something. And so like Skyrim and Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 all run at 60 frames on Xbox Series X, but not on PS5, which is fascinating.
Amazing. All right.
All the Far Cry games, Far Cry 3, 4, 5, New Dawn, all 60 frames on Series X, but not on PS5.
You know what? I have the Platinum in Far Cry 3 on PS3 and PS5. PS4, but I do not have all the achievements for it. So that is something I need to consider going forward.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's my spiel.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for you. I mean, like I would grab a Series X right now if it were like literally that easy. Like the nearest GameStop is like an hour and 10 minutes away from me. So I'm like, well,
right.
I'm not driving for that just to maybe have a chance of getting a Series X. But yeah, if I could just like roll out of bed and be like, yeah, screw it, I'll go check it out. No, it's really funny. All right, so that brings us to our main topic, and our main topic tonight is something so confusing that we had to. It had to be Austin to explain it to us. So there's a new Hideo Kojima game coming out, or maybe there's not. But what if there was? But it can't be. But if it is, that would be amazing. But it's not. But it might be. Austin, this is too much. I am too dumb to play Hideo Kojima games. So that means I am too dumb to follow this entire just insane story wrapped around the game. So do you want to handle it from here on out?
Yes. And I'll try my best. I think if I had to guess, most of the people listening probably know the details for the most part. So I'm going to try and stitch this together as much as I can, but it's probably going to be pretty difficult for me to do so. So just an FYI in case I'm like not making any sense. But basically, there was a game that was revealed.
Sorry, that just sounds like a Hideo Kojima game at that point. We're just like, it'll probably make sense if you really pay attention. If you already know, but if you don't know, then God help you. Yeah.
If you haven't watched the 12-hour explanation video.
Yeah, and if you haven't watched it backwards, set to Snake Eater, but the German version of Snake Eater, not the English
and if you
version.
didn't say Jareth into your microphone while you were watching the video, then you won't understand it.
Yeah, and if you did not, and also if you didn't say Mantis into a mirror 3 times with the lights off, he can't come in and help explain it to you. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, in April, this game was revealed, I believe, only on the PlayStation blog. I don't think it was shown off anywhere else, but it's called Abandoned. And basically, the gameplay they showed was kind of this forest type setting. It's like snowing. It looks to be some sort of first-person shooter survival game.
All right, I am with you so far. Okay,
right. And so again, this just kind of popped up on the PlayStation blog back in April. So it's been a couple months now, over a couple months. It's been about 2.5 months. But nobody ever really thought anything of it. It just kind of appeared, and it was another indie game and made by this studio, Blue Box Studios, I believe is the supposed game studios title. Blue Box Game Studios, that's what it is. And again, like nobody batted an eye until the past 7 days. And I don't know the exact timeline on all this stuff, so I'm probably way out of order. But basically, there's this huge theory that this game abandoned for PS5 is actually some sort of secret Hideo Kojima or Silent Hill related video game. Which, of course, you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense because Kojima doesn't work for Konami anymore. And last we heard, Kojima had some sort of weird, like, kind of antagonistic sever with that company. Like, it things, from what the public heard, it wasn't a very happy ending with Kojima and
Well,
Konami
no,
after
dude.
Metal
I
Gear.
mean, obviously, because like, what there was that shot of like what Norman Reedus drinking a mug that just said what Konami's tears, right?
Yeah.
Like, was like, yeah, dude, that was like a total middle finger to Konami. Like, of course, it was not an amicable split.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that in mind, this whole situation is weird. Obviously, like coming off of that. But basically, the theory is, like I said, that this abandoned game is somehow connected to Kojima. And I'm not going to go into everything because it's literally just like pages and pages and pages of stuff. And, we'll talk about at the end whether we like actually believe this or not. But, there's a few examples like, obviously the most prominent one is that Kojima's done this before. He did it with Metal Gear Solid 5. They announced the Phantom Pain was what it was called at the Game Awards, I think in like maybe 2013, 2014.
That feels right.
And it just came out, and Jeff Keighley was like, "Here's the Phantom Pain, and it's made by Moby Dick Studios." And it was like, okay, all right. So it's like a new game, new development team, whatever. But of course, over the kind of media cycle of that title, you come to find out that like the director on the game is named Joachim Mogren, and it's like this guy that has bandages all over his face, obviously echoing the character in the Phantom Pain game, which I won't spoil who that is, by the way, because that's still one of the best story moments in all of Metal Gear. But basically, it was this fake guy saying that he was the director of the Phantom Pain. And of course, we all know that it's Metal Gear Solid 5. They eventually announced that like maybe a year after they announced the Phantom Pain. They added on Metal Gear Solid 5, the Phantom Pain. So he did that with that. And then he did it again with PT, which I didn't actually remember. PT came out, from my understanding, they didn't say it was related to Silent Hill at all. And they said that it was being developed by 7780 Studio, which of course was not accurate. It was actually Kojima Productions at the time before it was canceled. So my point is, this has happened twice already with Kojima. He's already done this like weird, all right, I'm making this game, but by the way, you're not going to know for like a year.
Yeah, sorry. This one's for Elijah, but he just gave him the old Dinkenflicka, right? Just want to make sure he's listening to this episode that he couldn't make. Yeah. All right, so I'm with you so far.
Okay.
So he just does a whole bunch of head fakes on these games, which I kind of understand. Like, I've never Peace Walker, I guess, is like the only Metal Gear game I've ever played or beaten, I guess. Right. I just don't have like a whole lot of familiarity with Hideo Kojima, but like I think the dude is incredibly important to the games industry because like I think having an auteur is critical. Like I think that's what like really helps cement it as like an art form, you know? Like if you see something so unique and so singular that you can just like look at a movement or like look at a cutscene or just look at any aspect of the game and just be like, that is a Hideo Kojima product, you know? Right. Like I think that's insane. Like that's really cool because like how many hundreds of people does it take to make a game these days, or at least like a game that lives up to like AAA modern expectations? And so to like cite one thing and just be like, that's old Hideo throwing a curveball at us again. Like that's incredible that you can just like make yourself known in a sea of people who literally have to build this entire fictional world, like this apparatus around your idea. Like that's so cool and so important. But besides that, like I just like, oh man, I get so bored playing his games. Like, it's not anything on him. Like he's telling very interesting stories. They're just not stories that I'm individually interested in.
Right.
Huge difference. And so just the fact that like everyone, like the fact that he did the two head fakes is just like incredible because like he just wants like a distance. You know, he just wants to like not have people anticipate the Hideo Kojima game for 2 years. He just wants
Right.
there to be nothing and then exist a Hideo Kojima experience.
I think that's part of it. I mean, I wonder why and I'm not saying that this is happening again. I don't fully believe that this is a Kojima game, and I'll get into some of the kind of quote unquote evidence here in a second. But I kind of wonder, like, in his head when he did that with PT and with Metal Gear, if it was kind of like, okay, let's announce this and see what the public's reaction is, and like gauge, because I guess in my eyes at least, that gives kind of an interesting view where it's like, you slap the name Metal Gear on something and people obviously are going to be excited. But when you just call it the Phantom Pain and it's like just this random game, I kind of wonder if they looked at that and they looked at their response and kind of used that to better the game. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just Kojima like playing tricks. I don't know.
And I think there's like a strength in like the anonymity of it too.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's got to be so just like liberating to be like, I'm making a game and no one knows I'm making it.
Right.
Like I'm doing this like incredibly big, daunting thing, and no one is just like waiting for what the guy who did Metal Gear Solid 3 is like doing. He's
Right.
just able to like come in blind, and like there's no disappointment when it gets delayed, and there's no confusion when like David Hayter doesn't come back, and it's what's his nuts from 24, there's no sort of like weird cycle operating not even about your game, but about the production of your game, which is like inherently different than the final product of your game. There's like,
right.
And so just like operating independently of all that just sounds like really cool. And like, I don't know if he was doing that because like he was trying to drive up the mystique. That might've been part of it. But like, I think part of it too was just he wanted to distance himself from it. Like he didn't want it to be like a Hideo Kojima game until it was like ready to be consumed as a Hideo Kojima game. And like, I respect that. Like, I completely get that.
Right.
But the internet has, just so many people who are smart and are able to put things together, and also has a lot of people who are dumb and like connecting dots, so like all these innocuous things make more sense, when viewed as a whole. And so I personally don't think it's a Hideo Kojima game just because like he's already done this, and so like,
yeah, that's the thing, is it's like so unoriginal at this point.
Yeah,
like it's just if this really is him again, it's like, all right, can you like think of something else to do next time?
Yeah, man, you've done the same trick twice already or 3 times now. It's just like put another club in your bag, man.
Right.
You sent me a video just before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sorry? Is there more that you're dissecting about the whole?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Here, let me go into some of the. No, that's fine. Let me go into some of the evidence that people have, been attributing to this theory of it being a Kojima game. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to hit some random ones. There's like tons of it. So, and half of it, I think, is just crazy people aligning something that isn't necessarily like actually a connection. But okay, so one interesting thing that this team is doing that no one's ever heard of, they're getting a PS5 app that apparently allows real-time trailers for the game on your PS5. And obviously, if you think back to the second to last thing Kojima did, PT, that's literally what that was. It was essentially, in fact, he called it a playable teaser, is what PT stands for. And so it just strange on that front, I suppose. No one's ever done this on PS5, and no one's done it really since PT. And so that's kind of an interesting one. This studio, Blue Box Game Studios, again, supposedly the ones working on Abandoned. They made some tweet I guess it was last week. They said, guess the name Abandoned equals first letter S, last letter L. Of course, people believe that means Silent Hill. But I believe...
all right, that one's kind of a I guess like the importance of like the game from like the studio we've never heard of. Like, all right, like that. Yeah. That's weird. That's like, I don't want to say red flag because that's like a negative connotation. But I'm like, all right, that lifts one of my eyebrows. Yeah. But like, I don't know, like the dude's really smart, right? Like Hideo
Mhm.
Kojima is very smart. I think he'd like
Yeah.
hide it a little better than
Yeah.
this, and like how a first grader like finds words in like a word search.
Right.
Like I think it'd be a little deeper than that, but I don't know.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking around a little bit because this article is like 400 pages long. This is a good point. Blue Box Game Studios, rather, and then PlayStation Studios, the logos are like completely reversed. So the PlayStation Studios logo has the black kind of border with the white center square with the black PlayStation logo in it. Whereas the Blue Box Game Studios has the black inner square with white text and then the white overall um, kind of border. And some people are saying, oh, maybe it's Blue Box Game Studios because it's like the color of the PS4 case. And I'm like, that seems like a bit of a stretch to me. The Blue Box Game Studios apparently only has a single employee, Hassan. I'm gonna butcher this name, Kahraman, who, of course, coincidentally shares his initials with Hideo Kojima.
Okay,
Again,
yeah,
maybe a little bit of a stretch on that one, but I don't know. Um, let's see. The only previous game that they made, supposedly, is a Steam early access title called The Haunting Bloodwater Curse. And if I'm not mistaken, oh no, it's this one. And they've also supposedly made a game called The Whisperer for Android, but it can't be found anywhere. So there's some strange things here. There's another
sure.
game that they said that they made, but it only has 5 downloads. So, but to me, that's also like, okay, maybe this is because it's an indie studio that no one's heard of.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough though, right? Just because
Yeah,
like Ready at Dawn made like the God of War games on PSP and like
right.
Daxter on PSP, and then like their next game was like what, like The Order 1886. It's like, well,
Right.
that's kind of a stretch. Like I would never
Yeah,
tell a developer because they've made one type of game that there's no way they can make another type of a game.
exactly. That's why I think it's a little bit of a little out there, I would say.
Sure.
Their Twitter account is called BB Game Studios. Of course, for those that play Death Stranding, BB, that was like a thing in that game. I believe that's what the little like babies were called, like the BB pod or something.
Sure.
So people are associating that with Kojima. Here's an interesting one. I wanted to talk about this. We talked about this briefly, but there was a Death Stranding director's cut trailer. They announced the game would be coming to PS5.
Yeah.
Some interesting stuff there because there are actually full on Metal Gear like references in that trailer.
The dude, yeah, you're a big Metal Gear fan. So I don't want to say what happens in the trailer because you haven't seen it yet, and I don't
Yeah.
think it seems like you haven't had it spoiled for you yet.
I've seen. I know that there's like he's in like a box or something at some
Yeah,
point, and
yeah, that part, because it's funny. I didn't think it was a Death Stranding trailer at first. I thought it was him remaking Metal Gear at first. Like
yeah,
that, like that's how like heavy the references were. Was that I thought it was the other game.
well,
Super
and
interesting. Like that, you should watch that whole segment with
yeah, I need
Hideo
to.
Kojima because, like I said, I don't really care for Hideo Kojima's games. I think the dude is like fascinating. Like I follow him on
Right.
Twitter just because he like always posts like, "Oh, hey, I'm reading this book."
Yeah,
It's just some weird book on
yeah,
like music, like Devo music videos, and it's just like talking about like the art production or like the set design that like went into that. I'm like, that's weird. I didn't know that existed. But that's cool that like that's what you're thinking about tonight. And he just has like all these like weird thoughts about like like predicting like 9/11 basically in like one of his games, or just like how 9/11 like affected one of his games. I need to rewatch it because it was already,
right.
if E3 already feels like it was a year ago. But like he's just like a thoughtful dude who just like thinks about every possible angle that something could be like interpreted. And so because of that, I'm like, maybe this is a Hideo Kojima game.
Right. Well, the thing people aren't really talking about is from my understanding, there's like full on just Metal Gear Solid music in that trailer. Um, and if that's the case, again, I haven't really watched it. I've clicked around in it, but I haven't fully watched it yet. But if that's the case, obviously Sony had to get that approved by Konami.
Sure.
Like they couldn't just have like Metal Gear Solid music in the trailer without repercussions.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting thing as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of different stuff. And then the last one I'll probably touch on is that this Hassan Kahraman, who is the supposed only person at the company based off their LinkedIn. He has an interesting PlayStation trophy list. And
Okay. I
no,
thought you were going
but
to say resume, but all right. Yeah, hit me.
no. So there's a game on his trophy list that does not exist. It's called Demon Blood, and it has Siren Head, I guess, in its artwork. Which, if you don't know Siren Head, that's kind of like a I guess some horror kind of, not character, but mythological creature. I don't know.
Sure.
But I guess somehow Junji Ito has connections with Siren Head. And about a year ago, Kojima said that he and Junji Ito were in talks to work together. So
Okay.
it's a little interesting that this guy has a PlayStation game on his trophy list that literally doesn't exist, that has Siren Head. I will say, I think that's probably the strongest point for me, is that is a little weird, because obviously PlayStation has to approve games for them to be on the trophy platform.
Sure. I
So
mean, well, it's just like it's. So this is obviously alluding to something bigger, right? Because
yes,
you can't just
yeah,
mess with Sony API. They just
no,
wouldn't let some dinky ass developer who doesn't have a
right,
pedigree or resume. They just wouldn't let them mess with that. This is kind of genius, um, native marketing at this point. This is a great this is the kind of stuff that I wish I would be able to pitch at ad agencies. It's just hey, what if we just
right.
made us? What if the advertising campaign, at least before we even announce it, is just a scavenger hunt? What
Right.
if it is just finding the friggin' Zodiac killer? What if it is like that?
Yeah.
And you were mentioning this guy. You sent me the video that he
Yeah. So
posted.
yeah, that's a good point.
And it does kind of look like a hostage video. I did not get vibes of a dude who was it felt more like a production than a confession, if that makes
Right.
sense. It felt more just okay, this is the part where we have to admit that it's just us, and
Yeah.
it's just us. We're the whole entire studio, and we can do this. This is where you're on, man. And it doesn't feel like I feel like if it were real, it'd be yeah, I'm at my desk doing work, and I have to film a video to prove to you nutbags that this is real. That I'm yep, this is what a level looks like, and he's just waving a camera phone in front of his computer screen or whatever. It wasn't that. It literally looked like there was
Yeah.
he was in a sound studio,
He was. It's very interesting too, and these are my last couple points. Is that video? Obviously, he comes out and he's I don't know the exact quote. I probably should have looked it up, but he says something to the effect of, he's not affiliated with Konami or with Kojima,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're just their own team, and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing that people have been pointing out is that, and again, this is kind of just something I feel like people are saying because they hope it's true.
Sure.
But if this company doesn't exist, then technically they can't be affiliated with Kojima and Konami.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And people have been throwing that argument out there like crazy. And I'm
Yeah,
all right, I get it, but that's kind of just a major cop out argument. If they don't exist, then
that's the Airbud rule, right? It's well, there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. It's just some BS thing.
Right.
I'm choosing to believe this is not a Kojima game, but I think some of this evidence is really interesting, and I think that this might be the last good conspiracy theory. I feel like conspiracy theories had a really good run, and if we're talking about JFK, that's awesome. If we're talking about Bigfoot, that's great. Loch Ness monster, awesome.
Right.
Crop circles, so much fun. But conspiracy theories have really had just a bad rap the past couple of years, with good reason to have a bad rap the past couple of years. But it's nice to have a fun one, and some of this evidence I didn't know about, and I find it really compelling. I'm choosing to believe it's not, just because I would, if I were this dude, let's pretend this I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, the blue box.
Blue Box Studios,
Yeah,
or the guy is
the
that
guy at Blue Box Studios.
Hassan Kahraman.
Okay,
I believe is his name.
If this Hassan is like a real person who's like genuinely developing a game that has nothing to do with Hideo Kojima, and then like this game comes out and everyone just like bombs the reviews because they're just like, man, this is supposed to be like a Hideo Kojima joint, whatever. He's just like, yeah, man, I told you for a year and a half every single day that it wasn't. Like, that'd be like devastating, where it's just like, you don't even want to believe that I could make a game worth your time because of tenuous connections that you animals managed to draw up in your eroded brains between like, oh yeah, both of our initials are the same, gotta be a Kojima game. Like, I'm like defending this game developer from like the immediate backlash that would exist if it turns out this game is real and is not tied to Kojima at all. The evidence is like compelling. Some parts of the evidence are compelling. Others, I'm like, come on, guys, like try a little harder.
Some of it's kind of like they're just grasping for straws. Like I feel like there's a lot of it in my eyes. Just, and I'm a critic, like with my job, I have to be skeptical of everything I hear, and so I've looked at a lot of this stuff, and it's like, all right, about 75% of this is easily like just something you're really pulling on. Like it's easily kind of debunked. Like it's just something you're grabbing at, hoping for it to be true. And so, but there are parts of it. Like I do think, like I said, the last bit about that game that doesn't exist on PlayStation trophies, that is fascinating. Because like this guy that has no resume,
that's Sony's in on it at that point,
right?
Like,
right. That's the weirdest one to me. And so I do think something is potentially going on. Do I think it's Kojima related? I don't know. Could it be Silent Hill related? Maybe, but I don't necessarily know that Kojima is exactly involved in it.
I mean, honestly, I don't know. Besides the name, is there any sort of like indication that there's a connection to Blue Point, who are like the masters?
No, actually,
who are like the masters of remasters? Sorry, that was so bad.
No,
but like, because they were long attached to like a Metal Gear.
Yep.
Solid reboot, right? Or like a remake, I guess.
So they did the HD collection, was Blue Point, and then yes, there was a rumor going around for a while that they were remaking Metal Gear Solid.
All right, so let's put this in perspective, and then let's wrap up because we are getting a little long. But like, you can go first person in Metal Gear Solid, correct?
Right.
Like I'm basing this off like the Twin Snakes version.
Yeah,
that's the one I've like watched someone play the most. And like, it doesn't the first person perspective exist?
I guess you can, but it's not necessarily. You can't stay in it. You can do it when you're
fixed,
standing still.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So there's that. It takes place in Alaska, so there's snow.
Right.
Blue Box, Blue Point.
There you go.
Nailed it. Right. That's the three we need. I have no idea. I'm really dumb when it comes to stuff like this. I think it's exciting. Like, I get why people are getting into it, but at the same time, it's like some stretches here, guys. I don't know what to tell you.
My biggest worry is, like you said, that this is going to come out and it's not going to be at all connected to anything, and then this guy is just going to get destroyed.
Well, it's just amazing too, because like there was all that Metal Gear stuff shown. So like clearly like the Metal Gear, so many Metal Gear assets exist in a PS5 quality thing.
Yeah. Right.
It's the conspiracy. This is a fun conspiracy theory. I'm back in it. I'm back on them as like a genre.
It's fun. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't think I believe it necessarily, but I wouldn't not believe it if they came out and announced that like it was somehow connected. But the last thing I'll say is that not that he knows everything, but Jason Schreier did come out and he was like, yeah, I think this is going to end in disappointment. And I was like, well, that's an interesting take as somebody that does have a lot of kind of inside sources. And not that I'm a fan of him, but I think it's just kind of interesting to get the viewpoint of somebody that obviously knows a lot about the kind of the behind closed doors stuff in the industry, kind of coming out and saying that, maybe like, don't get too excited.
Yeah, and like Jason Schreier, like the dude like loves ruining a good time. Like he is he's got more leaks than like a sinking ship. You know, like that guy loves to just ruin people's parties.
Maybe Kojima's got it locked. You know, maybe he's not letting anything out there.
Maybe he's sitting there. It's just like maybe he's, but also like maybe he's just like, all right, I fooled Jason. He was the toughest domino to knock over, but I got him. God, I care nothing about Metal Gear Solid, but like all I want to do now is like explore these games, just like better understand this guerrilla marketing tactic that's like seemingly going on. Yeah. Damn it!
It's fascinating.
Should I play Twin Snakes so I get one to?
I would. I mean, if you've never been into them, I don't know if you're going to get into them now. But I love Metal Gear. I will say you should look up the story of Metal Gear Solid 2.
I played a little bit of that one in college, and I just remember like the one thing that like really sticks out to me is like you're on the rafters like crawling through while that guy's like giving a speech. I'm like, oh damn, this is really cool. Like this feels like a Bourne movie.
There is
like
some
a flashback scene when he was a spy.
There's some story stuff in that game that is so almost dystopian the way that Kojima predicted the future. Like there's a whole monologue at the end of the game that like predicts the 21st century. It's fascinating.
Damn it, that is exactly my speed. I'm always talking about.
I'll send you a video after this. It's really interesting.
All right, cool. Damn it, I'm just gonna play these games. Is there like a baby mode on them? Because I feel like I'm just not good.
I think so. I think there's an easy mode.
All right.
I think there's an easy, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll check it out and report back on the podcast. Anything else you wanna add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of Frameskip episode 59. Thank you so much for listening. If you have listened, if you are hearing this message to you right now, that means you know Frameskip can be found on various podcast services. But it'd be really cool if you told your friends about it. Let's get some more ears listening to this show, and you can tell your friends whether they got Android or iOS or some weird device that I'm not even remotely familiar with. Yeah, are there Linux phones? There's got to be, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, we're available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and YouTube. So you have friends, but you do not have excuses for not telling them to listen to this show. So please do so. If you would like to send a question, we are always happy to hear from our audience, and we would love to answer your questions on air. You can send it to our bit.ly form, that is bit.ly/frameskipq. Or you can send it to our podcast directly at our email, that is frameskippodcast@gmail.com. Or you can hit us up on Twitter at frameskippod. And we are also at that same handle on Instagram. A bunch of our hosts are not here tonight. Normally we roll 5 deep or 4.5 deep, depending on how you want to count some people. So Seth, who is not here tonight, you can reach him at Seth the 90s Kid on Twitter. Please don't follow him, though. He really doesn't like it when people do that. Elijah, probably the most prominent streamer of all of us. He is usually on Twitch. He has a new work schedule, so he could not make it tonight. But he can be found at Loco Lizardman. I believe that is his Twitch handle also. You can find Austin at Austin J. Eller on Twitter. And you can find me, George, at GB Loftus on Twitter. Don't follow me either. I just get drunk and talk about sports or comic books or weird existential crises that I experience throughout the day.
Favorite.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really interested in any of that. So let me do you a favor and tell you not to follow right now. One of my interests is comic books, though. And so I have put together an episode, and I'm previewing the very first episode of a comic book podcast I started with a friend named Fabio, who has been on this show in the past. And look forward to that in the feed here. We're talking about... God, what story are we talking about? Avengers Disassembled. That is the story we're talking about, which is like the beginning of the modern era of Marvel Comics. So I'm very excited. And like they lightly touched on that story in WandaVision. So if you've seen that show, you are familiar with some of the base material. So look at that. You're already ahead on the reading list. Austin, any final words for the crew?
I love you, everyone, except for the coach, Kyle Newman. because you're using the Frameskip Twitter account.
Oh my God, I completely forgot about Coach. Oh, good grief. Yeah, sorry, Coach doesn't have a Twitter, so he just uses the @FrameSkipPod. So if you have a question for Coach, feel free to just hit up the FrameSkipPod. If you want to ask him, like, hey, what do you coach? Because I don't think I've ever gotten that answer. And
Well,
damn, I can't believe I never thought to ask it. I've only been recording with you guys for like
maybe
9 months.
Maybe that's the next great Kojima conspiracy theory.
Oh, wait, hold on. Coach Jima? Is that what you said? The signs are everywhere.
Hey, they both sound the same.
That's right. They make the same phonetic sound. Like, oh my God. The truth is out there. Mulder and Scully were right. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Happy weekend to you. I believe this goes up on Friday, right?
It does.
Sorry, my dog. It's starting to like rain and thunder here, so you might hear my dog crying in the background. I apologize. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Enjoy some games and let us know what you're playing. And we will talk to you next week. Love you guys.
Goodbye.
Smooch.